Time travel's supposed to be impossible. Enter Boltgun, a game that takes the look and feel of yesterday to today, warping you back to the Imperium of Man and the Emperor's great men, the Space Marines, as you take up chainsaw and bolter to make a scar to cure the cancer of all that is evil. Warhammer games have been hit and miss, but these last few years the titles have been satisfying, and with Space Marine 2 finally rearing its bolt-browed head, we can safely say we're looking forward to what we have in the third-person department. However, after Hired Gun, there really hasn't been anything to fulfill the first-person department until now, and that is Boltgun, a simple title, and it aims to return us to the glory days of shooters like Doom, Power Slave, Quake, and Blood. This is in the hands of Auric Digital and Focus Entertainment. Auric has a couple good titles under the belt. Let's see how they did. I spent many hours with this game, and here are my preview and impressions across their B-roll footage. My sponsor's me, my brand is me. Subscribing does help hugely. Also, would you like to see more previews and impressions, exclusive coverage of games? I would love to know it. Leave a comment if you do, and perhaps what game you'd like to see. With today's gaming technology, titles benefit from rendering techniques and art styles that can return you back to the days when pixel counts per line were a thing, and when enemies were nothing more than 2D decals that spun in place to look 3D. But if you turned quick enough, you could always see a little bit behind the scenes. And here the developers have had the wherewithal to understand that every convenience of today doesn't need to be channeled backwards. Otherwise, at some point you get a game that, instead of feeling like a blast from the past, feels like just a poor-looking game from the present. But Boltgun isn't like that. It's a straight-up first-person shooter. Movement is paramount. Fast reflexes are required on the higher difficulties, and let's waste no time in stating this. It is a messy-looking game in all of the right ways. You're investigating the possibilities of your enemies using a powerful artifact. Under the commands of a mysterious leader, you're sent down planetside to take out enemies, with the idea that if they move, they're enemies. It's about shooting and leaping and launching and flowing around the maps consistently, hearing enemies' projectiles melt into the corner of the wall behind you as you sprint around a 45-degree angle and chomp down some health bits, then leap back into the open, switch to a plasma weapon, and burst enemies into their own separate pixels. Boltgun has a bare-knuckle sensibility to it. Up close or far away, it's loud and big. Its explosions are in that old style, with enemies that don't aim as much as point at you, wanting to fill the place that you're in with as much enemy fire as possible, and it's your job to not be in that spot when it hits. Boltgun so far feels excellent in my preview time. Switching from various weapons you find and continue to find throughout the game in secret locations, you can find bolters and shotguns, but also others that are hidden even in the preview sections. One surprise I found is that some of the weapons felt a bit differently than I expected. For example, the shotgun's surprisingly tight splatter pattern means that it's not a required addition in tight corridors, but instead a bit of a beneficial supplement. Less chaos and cloud of instant killing, and more larger pattern of persistently high damage. While up close it still splattered most enemies into clouds of red mist appropriately, the idea that it was a little bit different made me change up my gameplay enough, and it actually was something I found very welcoming. Also appropriate is that your Space Marine is armed with a chainsword, throwing every single thing at you that you can possibly imagine at one time. It's best to remember this is a sword and a chainsaw, a swinging weapon that actually does more damage if you swing it slower and let it slice slowly through an enemy. The dichotomy is there, but that's the amazing design of Warhammer, where artistic form defeats actual function every single time. That being said, so far, with the time I spent, it was the levels that I loved. Not labyrinthian or even notably complex. Instead, they were dialed down for movement versus complexity. The skeleton of tunnels leading to larger areas for bigger battles can be seen naturally expanding as you go from moment to moment, getting larger and larger, each spot growing as you get to them. Then at the end of the level, the game alerts you that a purge has begun, and a massive wave-style battle begins, throwing different enemies at you at what feels like 100 to 1. It's that fine point of old-style gaming with control from today that feels fluid and just works in Boltgun. So far, my time spent with the game has been nothing but excellent, with a couple stutters here and there where perhaps loading behind the scenes was occurring. The game's options let you actually go in and make the game look older or newer with a polygon slider to really ugly it up, reminding older gamers of the time when sometimes a game manual would have to explain which enemy was which because there were so few parts that it was made out of that it was hard to parse them on screen. The game's old school notes resonate in the audio, while it's cleaner than the older samples that those of us who have played the ancient Warhammer games remember, where subtitles were required because the screeching of an 8-bit sample was almost unlistenable. They also do their best here to make it sound that way, with a ton of processing on the voices and the effects. But it's a clearer result due to the source being ultimately about 1,000 times more detailed in its capture, though some of the sounds can be a bit confusing, like the sound of your helper teleporting around, or finding new items and alerting you. Another positive quality of life experience that we see reflecting when this game is made, but it sounded like a barking dog. I spent the first couple moments of the game thinking that some kind of demon dog was chasing me throughout the entire level. Extra tension was appreciated, but it does show that perhaps a bit of work on that might separate it enough to not confuse the players as they continue to go through it. Boltgun offers a cleaner, more dialed-down first-person shooter look, and it's exactly the place that I want Warhammer games to go. They aren't strangers to going off the beaten path, but here the idea to actually go backwards in the ideals and artistic design has helped tremendously, especially as it's in concert with improved movement and a couple more modern gameplay techniques. And making a retro-looking game isn't anywhere near as easy as just making the graphics look old. It's designed by declination, refusing a number of the graphical changes and choices and chances of these years after the target year, and saying, let's make it look and feel like that time frame. It's no mystery why this can work, especially as Doom and Quake and Blood and others ushered in what all gamers now play as first-person titles, no matter how far they've matured or regressed, depending on your opinion. But the techniques to make something today look like it was a decade ago always fascinates me. And so far, Boltgun hasn't just nailed the look, but the feel, without, at least so far, alienating gamers who may see this and want to jump in despite it being the first Warhammer first-person shooter they may have tried, or even their first Warhammer experience. While I didn't get to see much of the story prime, what I did see was a showing of a presentation that's going to be more about boots on the ground than books to read in digital form. Book-ended cutscenes that move the story but let the movement of the character do most of the narrative lifting. And I'm also fine with that. I look forward to the game's full release, and if you are too, subscribe to the channel, check it out, check out me on Twitter at Jeremy Penner, or follow the podcast every single Friday, the Best Gaming Podcast. We're on Spotify and iTunes, all those places. 4 or 5 of us get together. These are gamers from around the world, and we talk about games. We have good times. Conversation, hey, goes off the rails sometimes, but it is an absolutely awesome place. Or check out the Patreon. No matter what, have an awesome time. Peace out, and gang, gang.